Okay, let's dive straight in. Picking up from that moment, Darius opened his door to find the stranger in his kitchen, instead of grabbing my electronics or something more valuable. I reached for my phone to call 911 but decided to investigate. First, maybe it was just my neighbor Calvin who had a spare key for emergencies. Though Calvin would usually announce himself, I quietly opened my bedroom door and tiptoed down the hallway. The sounds grew louder, the refrigerator door opening and closing, the microwave beeping. Whoever this was, they were making themselves quite at home. I peered around the corner into my kitchen, and what I saw left me more confused than scared. A middle-aged white woman with bleached blonde hair piled high on her head was standing in front of my open refrigerator, examining its contents like she was shopping at a grocery store. She was wearing a hot pink tracksuit that looked like it came straight from 2003, and she was muttering to herself as she rummaged through my food. "Excuse me?" I said, my voice coming out stronger than I expected given the absurdity of the situation. The woman jumped, nearly dropping the container of my leftover jerk chicken she'd been holding. She turned to face me, her eyes widening briefly before narrowing into a look of indignation, as if I was the one who would disturb her privacy. "Well, hello?" she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Are you the homeowner?" I blinked several times, wondering if I was still dreaming. "Yes," I said. "I'm home. In my home. Where I live. The question is, why are you in my home?" She scoffed, placing a hand on her hip while still clutching my leftovers with the other. Well, I knocked and no one answered. The door was unlocked, so I assumed this was the open house. I shook my head in disbelief. "Open house, lady. This isn't for sale. This is my house. I live here, and my door wasn't unlocked." That's when I noticed a small tool that looked suspiciously like a lockpick on my counter. "Well," she said, her voice rising defensively. "The real estate listing said there would be refreshments. I was just checking." I was dumbfounded. Not only had this woman broken into my house, but she was now trying to justify stealing my food with an obvious lie. The nearest house for sale was 3 blocks away. "There is no real estate listing for this address," I said firmly. "Now I'm going to have to ask you to put my food down and leave before I call the police." At the mention of police, something changed in her expression. A calculated look crossed her face, and I had the distinct feeling I was about to witness some next-level mental gymnastics. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, straightening her posture as if her identity should mean something to me. "No. And frankly, I don't care. You're trespassing in my home and going through my refrigerator. That's all I need to know." She set down my container of jerk chicken and pulled out her phone. "My name is Patricia Whitfield, and my husband is very good friends with the chief of police. I was invited here by the homeowners, who are clearly not you. So I think you're the one who's trespassing." And just like that, within 5 minutes of waking up from my nap, I found myself in a standoff with a stranger in my own kitchen, watching her dial a number on her phone while giving me a smug look that said she thought she had the upper hand. Patricia Whitfield, as she called herself, had the audacity to turn her back to me as she made her call, as if dismissing me in my own kitchen. I stood there, still trying to process the sheer absurdity of the situation when I heard her speaking into her phone. "Yes, hello. I need to report an intruder," she said, her voice suddenly trembling with manufactured fear. "I'm at the Hanson Open House on Pinehurst Avenue, and there's a man here who's threatening me." She glanced back at me with a self-satisfied smirk before adding, "Yes, he's a large black man, and he's very aggressive. I fear for my safety." My jaw nearly hit the floor. In the span of 30 seconds, this woman had gone from being caught red-handed, breaking into my home, to somehow casting herself as the victim and me as the threat. The mental gymnastics were Olympic level. "Are you serious right now?" I said loudly enough for whoever was on the other end of the call to hear. "This is my house. She broke in while I was sleeping." Patricia covered the phone with her hand and hissed at me. "Be quiet. You're making this worse for yourself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The sheer entitlement, the casual racism, the confidence with which she was spinning this narrative. It was both infuriating and almost impressive in its audacity. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I pulled out my own phone and started recording video, making sure to capture both Patricia and the state of my kitchen, including the lockpick on the counter. For the record, I said clearly, holding up my phone, I am Darius Reynolds. This is my home at 1847 Pinehurst Avenue. I was taking a nap when I woke up to find this woman, who identified herself as Patricia Whitfield, in my kitchen going through my refrigerator. She has broken into my home and is now calling the police and falsely reporting that I am threatening her. Patricia's eyes widened when she realized I was recording. He's threatening me with his phone, she shrieked into her call. He's recording me without my consent. That's illegal. In the state we're in, it's completely legal to record someone in your own home, especially when they've broken in. I responded calmly, continuing to record. And I haven't made a single threat. I simply asked you to leave my property. While keeping my camera steady, I walked to the living room and picked up several pieces of mail from the coffee table, bringing them back to show on camera. Here's today's mail, addressed to Darius Reynolds at this address. Here's my driver's license. I held it up to the camera briefly, making sure my address was visible but covering my personal information. Patricia was turning a shade of red that matched her lipstick. She seemed to realize her plan was falling apart, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. He forged those documents, she yelled into the phone, and he made me come here. He forced me to break into his house because he's running some kind of scam. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. Oh, really? I somehow forced you to break into my house while I was asleep? Please explain how that works. The dispatcher must have asked her a similar question because Patricia's face contorted as she tried to come up with an explanation. He advertised, free food on Craigslist at this address. It's entrapment. I shook my head, still recording. I haven't posted anything on Craigslist, and even if I had, that wouldn't give you the right to break into someone's home. That's not how entrapment works, and that's not how the law works. Patricia was grasping at straws now. Well, the door was unlocked. It wasn't, I countered, pointing to the lockpick, and even if it had been, entering someone's home without permission is still breaking and entering. She adjusted her strategy yet again. I thought this was my friend's house. They all look the same in this neighborhood. So, you thought your friend would be okay with you breaking in while they weren't home and raiding their refrigerator? I asked. And somehow you had a lockpick ready just in case? That doesn't make any sense. Patricia was becoming increasingly agitated, her free hand gesturing wildly as she continued her conversation with the dispatcher. I could faintly hear the dispatcher trying to make sense of the conflicting information. Ma'am, can you verify the exact address you're at? I heard the dispatcher ask through the phone. Patricia hesitated, her eyes darting around as if looking for a house number inside my kitchen. It's the blue house on Pinehurst, she said vaguely. The exact address is 1847 Pinehurst Avenue, I called out clearly. And this is the homeowner speaking. He's lying, Patricia shouted. But her story was crumbling and she knew it. Look, just send someone quickly. I don't feel safe. As ridiculous as the situation was, I realized it could potentially become dangerous for me. False accusations against black men have historically led to tragic outcomes, and I wasn't about to become another statistic because some entitled woman couldn't admit she was wrong. I'm going to call 911 myself, I told her, and explained the actual situation. I kept my phone recording with one hand and used my smartwatch to make the call with the other, putting it on speaker so everything would be documented, and thus began the most absurd waiting game of my life. Standing in my kitchen with a strange woman who had broken into my home, both of us on the phone with emergency services, telling wildly different versions of the same story, all because I had decided to take a nap on a Tuesday afternoon. All because I had decided to take a nap on a Tuesday afternoon. While we waited for the police to arrive, Patricia's performance evolved from merely ridiculous to theatrical. She had backed herself into the corner of my kitchen, still clutching her phone even though the dispatcher had told her to stay on the line, but she had clearly muted the call. She was watching me with exaggerated caution, as if I might pounce at any moment, despite the fact that I was standing completely still and recording her with a calm demeanor. Can you please stop looking at me like that? She suddenly demanded. It's threatening. I had to laugh. Like what? I'm literally just standing here. You know what you're doing, she said, her voice taking on that particular tone that I'd heard too many times before, the one white women use when too